Now, when does El Dorado as a myth, as a term, even come into history, right? Because it doesn't start with him. This is something that people have been hearing about for quite a long time when we're talking about the explorers. About when does El Dorado become a, quote unquote thing for explorers?
Well, I was going to say the Spanish conquistadors first heard about it in around 1529, but it was actually a German conquistador in Venezuela named Dolfinger, I think. As a writer, I never have to pronounce any of these words. Ambrosio Dolfinger. The Germans, they licensed part of the Spanish territory in what's now Venezuela, and he, I think, was the first person to hear the story about a king of a city somewhere in South America in the general vicinity of Venezuela, who every day would slather himself in tortoise fat or some kind of sticky substance, and then his servants would use large straws to blow gold dust onto him, and he would then paddle a canoe out to the center of a lake and plunge in and disperse the gold dust into the water as a sacrifice to the lake god. This German conquistador, Dolfinger, who was out looking to get gold from the indigenous peoples, thought, well, that sounds really good. I would like to meet this king. And it wasn't terribly far-fetched, this story. There was a lot of evidence, a lot of really bright guys, including Dolfinger, came to the conclusion that this was absolutely legitimate, just based on the clues that they had firsthand. And on a broader level, you have, Pizarro finding Cusco, 10, 15 years earlier. And of course, Hernan Cortez conquering Mexico. Between Cortez and Pizarro, there was ample reason to believe that there was another big-ass golden city somewhere around there. So Dolfinger failed to find it, and a series of conquistadors in his wake tried and failed to find it throughout South America, just launching these massive expeditions with like 300 men and another 4,000 indigenous attendants, which probably had no choice in the matter. And they would slog through the Amazon for 1 to 3 years at a clip, everybody dying of disease or starvation along the way. And eventually they sort of homed in on what they called Guyana, which is now the southern part of Venezuela and a couple of the parts of the bordering countries where they felt that this city, El Dorado, was located. And that's when Walter Raleigh came into the picture. He also operated a pirating operation. He was a privateer. He had permission from Queen Elizabeth to pirate Spanish ships. And on one of them, some of his privateers captured a guy named Gamboa, who was the governor, I think, of Venezuela at the time. Probably not. But he knew an awful lot about the Incas, and he, again, what seemed to Raleigh really solid evidence that El Dorado was located in Guyana, and that is what put Raleigh on the scent of El Dorado.